Take it over like a year and a half to complete. So it's a very thorough study of water resources and also some information on housing will come up also in the session. Gotta go through some basic ground rules. One person speaks at a time. Please raise your hands. You don't need to respond back and forth. No more conversations. I'm sorry, but the time is limited. We have limited time here today. So there are 3x5 cards and pens. If you don't get to ask something, you don't get to comment, you can write them down, and I'll put them up here. And the person doing the report, Michael Allen, I'll read through all of that. Okay, so that would be helpful. And if you didn't sign it and put it in an email and phone number, please do. I think that's about it. So we'll get going. I'm Christy Wright, Comprehensive Plan Committee, one of the people. Sally is the chairperson. Sally, what is your last name? Nara. Right.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming. Other members of the committee have their name tags on too, so if you have any questions you want to ask them afterwards, if we can, we'll be happy to as well as Michael. Just a real quick reminder before we turn this all over. This is about the town of Kinderhook. So obviously this is housing, so we're going to be talking about water issues. We're going to be talking about zoning issues. So the zoning is in the town, it is not in the villages, okay? We don't have jurisdiction over the zoning in the village of Galatia, the village of Kinderhook. So I'm just telling you that, with the villages are part of the town. So if you're part of the village like I am, you have every reason to be here. But realize your individual zoning issues are on a village level, not on a town. Okay? Because that gets confusing for people sometimes. Thank you. And I'm writing things down.
Yeah, so the first up, we have Allison Sawyer, who's from New York Rural Water Association, and we're very happy to have her talk about the report that's 63 pages long and has maps and all kinds of good stuff. It is on the website, town website, near the comprehensive plan, okay? So you can get a look at it there. Thank you, Allison, for coming. So I'm going to turn this over to you.
Awesome. And are we doing questions at the very end?
Oh, we're doing, yes, I forgot. Please hold your questions till the very end of today. These folks will stay around and answer that if you want to move your stuff. Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Allison Sawyer. I am not wearing a name tag today. I should. I'll talk a little bit about source water protection and just a little bit about the town of Kinderhook. I'll mention the villages too. So for context, our previous source water specialist worked really hard with Christy and the Source Water Committee to make a drinking water protection plan. And I'll talk a bit about that today. So just a quick agenda. I won't spend too much time on that, but I'll tell you what we do at New York Rural Water, what the protection plan is, specific to the town of Kinderhook, and then a little bit of recommendations for individuals and what you can do. So first, this is a lot, but New York Rural Water is an association, it's a non-for-profit organization that's founded in 1979. It's composed of small rural water wastewater systems in communities of less than 10,000 people. It also includes consultants, suppliers, and contractors. So those are all our members, but we only have about 16 people employed. I am one of them. My boss is in the back. And what we do is we provide technical on-site assistance, specialized training, and so on. So the program that I work under is called the Source Water Protection Program. So you don't need to know all this, but basically it is a joint project between the USDA and National Rural Water to prevent the deterioration of water sources used for drinking water. So we're kind of a subsect of that, which is New York Rural Water. So a drinking water protection plan encompasses a lot of things, but I'll start with what source water even is. So if you're unfamiliar, source water refers to surface water or groundwater that supplies water to public water systems for drinking or other domestic purposes. So surface water is like your lakes, your rivers, reservoirs, and groundwater refers to aquifers. So all of the town of Kinderhook is from aquifers. And if you don't know what that is, I'll put this nice little schematic for you. An aquifer is right here. It is underneath the ground, and it's either rock or sediment that holds or transmits groundwater. So it's this blue thing right here. Permeable means the water goes through it. Impermeable means it does not. So I won't get into the different types of wells, but basically, if you have a drilled well, it's going into that aquifer, and that's how you're getting your water. So regardless if you're on a public water system here or a private well, you're getting it from groundwater. But I want to mention here that it's important to protect your surface water and your groundwater, regardless of where you're getting your surface water or source water, excuse me, because they're both connected. So you want to make sure we're looking at both to protect. So what is a drinking water source? Just a lot of words. Drinking source water plan. It's a plan to reduce or eliminate potential threats to drinking water supplies through either regulatory or voluntary controls. We aim to identify protection areas, potential contaminant sources, and suggested protection methods. So I wanted to share the Town of Kinderhook's vision statement. It is a long sentence, but I think it really covers everything we need to do here, which is that the Town of Kinderhook commits to protecting the quantity and quality of drinking water resources used by its residents, businesses, and landowners by identifying and implementing effective protection measures, engaging community support like we're doing right now, and pursuing resources to ensure access to adequate potable water. It's again very long, but I think it's good. It encompasses everything, and that was created by the Source Water Committee that's included in the plan. So this is also a lot to look at, but I just want to share what a public water system is. So it's any entity that provides water to the public, and there's certain parameters around that. And there are 3 different types. So if you see that column in the middle, and if you're curious, you can look this up on the EPA website. They all have individual numbers, but the types are community systems. So the Town of Kinderhook has, I think, 7, but that also includes the 2 villages. So that's, very different. But a community water system is a public system that serves the same people year round. So if you live in any of these, I think there's Blue Spruce Motel Apartments, let's see, Hanson's Mobile Park. So if you live on those, you're on a community water system most likely. And you can see the population served there. So the villages have their own public water systems that are much larger than the towns. There's also the rest of them, which is transient non-community systems. Those serve different people for more than 6 months out of the year. So anytime you go to Kinderhook Golf Club or Martin Van Buren Historical House, which serves a lot more people, that's a transient non-community. And if you're curious, the last is the non-transient non-community, which the Town of Kinderhook does not have. But the main reason I'm showing you this is I want you to focus your attention to the source type, and it's all groundwater. But I'm guessing that a lot of you are probably on private wells. So raise your hand if you're on a private well. All right, yeah, that's most of you. So I'm going to leave that up to Martin to talk more about. I'm just going to focus on the public. So if you do happen to live in one of these areas, you're on a public system. But regardless if you're on a private well, your source is also coming from groundwater. So I just have some cool maps to show you that our previous source water specialist did that I think are cool, and show you what we do when we're making a plan. So one of those things that we look at to create better protection strategies is topography. So that's elevation. You can see there's higher elevation at the bottom, so the tighter those contour lines. I won't get too much into this, but it helps or it determines groundwater and surface water movement and distribution. So that's why we look at that. Another thing we look at is superficial geology. So this is what's at the top of the ground, and this determines movement, storage, and infiltration of water. So this is really dependent on where you live. You can see there's a lot of different types in the Town of Kinderhook. So this is important because if you have, say, sand underneath where you live, your water is going to drain through that much quicker, versus if you have something like clay, you're more prone to runoff. So that's something we look at. And then we look at potential contaminants. So one of those things would be bulk storage facilities. So this is the Town of Kinderhook, and all those little black dots are petroleum bulk storage. I think there's one little green dot up in the corner, if you can see that. I don't know if everyone can see that. That is chemical bulk storage. I believe that's a fertilizer storage.
Caravelle, yeah.
Yeah, I'm right? Okay. So this is pretty common. It doesn't mean they are contaminants, but it means they could have the potential to be. So everything we do is just preventative. So we map out what could be a potential contaminant just in case anything were to spill. And we want to know where this is in proximity to wells or surface water. So that's what helps us create better protection maps. Another thing we look at is land use, land cover. And the reason this is under potential contaminants is because this could lead to non-point sources of pollution. For example, 35% of Kinderhook's land cover is pasture, hay, or cropland. So agriculture can often lead to fertilizer runoff. So we want to look at that. I think the second most is probably deciduous forest, but I'd have to check that. That's in the plan. So one thing that's really important for source water protection, and I'm pretty new to New York Rural Water, but I've been reading through a ton of plans and helping out with Kinderhook's finishing that up. And one of the main things we do is we want to recommend public education and outreach. So it can benefit your communities in a lot of ways. I'm happy you're all here. So we want to enhance environmental protection and strengthen that community collaboration. It's important to know where your water comes from and how to protect it. So I'll leave you with a few things that we've recommended or just ways that you can help protect your water, especially since so many of you are on private wells. Maintaining your septic systems is super important. And I actually have some handouts that I forgot to put out on the table if you're interested in learning more about that. Testing your private wells. We had that done and Martin's going to talk about that. So if you get the opportunity and you're on a private well, very, very important because they're not regulated. Supporting local clean water initiatives and groups. I know Kinderhook Lake Corporation is one right around here. That's a good one to get involved with. Properly caring for your lawn and garden. I put a little picture over there. That's important for reducing stormwater runoff and maybe filtration. And then properly disposing of your household hazard waste is another big one. So there's tons of resources for this on the DEC and DOH websites. If you have any more questions or want to take a picture, that's my contact info. But I think we're waiting till after to do questions. So yeah, I think that's all I have.
Thank you. If you could leave that up a little bit. By the way, I think I forgot to thank everybody for coming, but thank you for coming. The next person to speak is Martin Sartarian about the well testing. He actually was involved in testing all the 40 wells that got tested. So he's going to talk a little bit about the results of that. Thank you.
I'll be amazed if this works. Yeah, it's over. Yeah, that's it. Please hold.
Please hold.
Please hold. What is going on?
You know, and signs and plates, pictures and yeah, but he has to.
Right. It's crazy.
Yeah. Develop. That makes sense.
Hey, so my name is Martin Sartarian. Here's Patrick's here as well. We work for the New York State Department of Health in the Bureau of Water Supply Protection. And we had the opportunity to work with Rural Water this year in the town of Kinderhook. I had 2 rounds of sampling of private wells. We have a program with the state where we get a grant with the CDC, and we use that money to help. We find the best way to get people to test their wells if we do it and we pay for it. So that's what we end up doing. We definitely encourage you all to sample your wells and continue to do so. But again, Rural Water has a really nice source water protection plan, and we're able to supplement that a little bit with some actual water testing results in the community. And we really appreciate you guys letting us in your home. Yeah, so we worked with water on this and we sampled 40 wells in 2 rounds. I believe the last one was actually in November, pretty late in the year. We usually try to collect them from the pressure tank, which is the closest source right from the wellhead. Some people have some treatment in line.
I don't know if this is
We
even
just want to
hooked up
avoid
to anybody.
anything in the house. We want to get source directly coming in from the ground.
This is what's up there.
A lot of
This is
variation in wells, a lot of variation in depth and where they're drilled. There were quite a few that we visited and sampled right along the lake shore. Saw some potential issues there. If we
you
couldn't get
twice
to
and
the
me.
pressure tank site, usually a spigot there, we'll just try to go down as short as possible through the house. And then our lab and what we recommend includes the basic sampling of pH, ATP, color, turbidity, all these different analytes, nitrates, the big one. Iron, a lot of iron around here in New York State. Manganese chloride, that's going to be what you see around salted areas. Sulfate, sodium again, arsenic, lead. We see a little bit of that in New York, but not too much. We do see coliform and E. coli, and we'll talk about that. Coliform, we see positivity around like 40% average in New York State. And what that means is it's just simply, it shows that your well is vulnerable if there's some other contaminants in the area that could potentially get into your well. It's just like a measure of life. E. coli is a much more serious issue, and that's what we see from a warm blood in mammals usually. Here are lab results. You can see the ones bold. We have average and median to just kind of reduce the extremes. There were a couple of wells that were very unique, to say the least. So here, color, there's a little bit of an issue. That's just mostly going to be turbidity and sediment. Conductivity is related to hardness. I know you guys probably are aware there's some hard water around here, right?
Yeah.
So we definitely saw that, and that's not something unusual. We see that a lot, depending where you are. Some areas have issues of like radon or other contaminants. Around here, we see a lot of iron and manganese, and the hardness, and sometimes sulfur even. So yeah, there's the hardness. It's a little bit more than the recommended limit on average, but the median really isn't up there. What we did see a lot of is again this conductivity. Chloride's not too bad. Turbidity was a little high. Sodium was okay. I don't think the mean. So this, I just mentioned these conductivity, sodium, chloride are all kind of interconnected, and some of it could just mean how long the water had exposure to to minerals in the earth. It could also mean salt spreading, or it could actually just naturally be in the earth. They mine salts from the earth. Usually it's around lakes and stuff. But here you can see most wells are just here at the minimum count, but there were several groups of wells that were just really high in all three of these. These are extreme amounts of sodium chloride conductivity. These are measured in milligrams per liter. We saw those around the southern shore of the lake. We think that there's a lot of narrow roads there, and we believe it potentially could be an issue of getting the salt trucks in there and having them spill over. If you wanted to figure that out, we'd have to do some additional testing, or there's someone who would need to do some additional testing to see where the sources are for those. Again, to coliform bacteria, we see a lot of that. It's usually produced. It's in the ground. It's in the soil. It's in the water. Hopefully, if your well is intact and well maintained, that'll have a nice seal, and you won't have a lot of these coliforms. If it is present, again, like it indicates a vulnerability, not a direct issue. And if you do, you might have more of a risk contracting waterborne illness like we talked about, E. coli. And then we can hear, the MCL for that is 0, so we don't like to see any coliforms. And remediation for that can be shock, chlorination, we see some UV systems, a couple other people use different systems available too. We see a lot of RO, reverse osmosis out there because that takes care of most everything. Lead, we don't see a lot of that here. We didn't expect to. If we see it, it's usually because of old piping and the typical older buildings. That one's usually pretty easy to mitigate. Chloride, again, like it's found naturally in the environment, usually from rock salts, but it can be present as a result of human activity, road de-icing salts, fertilizers, landfills, industrial wastewaters can have some of that sodium and chloride in there. And then, this is just what to watch out for the health effects of that. And remediation typically can be done with reverse osmosis or deionization. We did see a lot of water softeners too in this area as well. Turbidity, you can see here in the water, it's hard to see. You can see it's brown here. That's probably a mixture of iron and manganese and sediment. This well, actually, I remember they had a really nice remediation system, but they weren't maintaining it properly, which is really important to keeping it in water safe. Again, we just want to inspect well for defects and filtration. Hardness, we all see this. It's higher mineral content, lots of calcium and magnesium. You can see that on your pictures. It's one of the most common issues we see with well water. And a lot of people address that with water sulfur. But that has to be maintained. You have to keep the salt in it. We see a lot of those that are online and are not in use. And if that's the case, there's a lot of surface area for bacteria to reproduce and grow. So something, and there's usually inside the house where it's a little bit warm.
It's fine.
Nitrates. So this we usually see from fertilizer use, nearby septics, animal feedlots, industrial waste, manure spreading. We saw some of that in the town. We heard about some of that in the town. It can be pretty harmful. Once we see concentrations over 1, we start to want to pay attention to it more. Over 3 indicates there's probably some contamination. That if it's up in the 3s or more, you're probably going to see that grow over time. And again, remediation for this will be RO systems, ion exchange, distillation, RO being the most common one that we see. Iron manganese, that's another issue we see here in New York State quite a bit, especially in this area. And again, it's common elements in rocks and soil and occurs naturally in water. Manganese, iron, these are the MCLs we have for them. I think there were only a few that went above this. And the remediation for this would be green sand filters, chlorination removes that, and filtration. Sodium, we talked about this alongside with chloride. Found in many foods, many components of salt. People with blood pressure issues should keep in mind. There is no direct drinking water into this, and it's recommended that there's less than 270 milligrams per liter for people on restricted diets, and less for even more restricted diets. Reverse osmosis is the most common we see for medium. And then here's the Minnesota Department of Health is a really nice, here's the QR, just of what the contaminants are, the different water treatments, systems that you can use. So like right on here, you need activated carbon, hard minerals, ion exchange, distillation, arsenic, RO is a good one for that. Hopefully we didn't see it, it's kind of radon or VOCs. And then here's our recommended testing schedule. So for coliform, again, that's the vulnerability analyte. we hope that he would sample for that every year. We know that that doesn't happen, but, and the rest that we, look at are, around every 3 to 5 years. If you did have, coliform positive sample, that I would especially like keep track of that every year or two to see how it's going. Yeah, and thanks. We really appreciate you guys inviting us into our homes. We might potentially be able to do some more sampling in the future. We're working with a couple other towns at the moment. But thank you, and we'll be available for questions.
Thank you. Last call for 3x5 cards. Anybody want some? You have questions you want to jot down? Michael Allen is the head director and chief bottle washer of Green Growth, and he's been helping with the plan, and he's just doing the tech right now, and he's a one-man band, so he'll be with us in a minute.
So those of you who remember, there was a survey we did, and now we've done, this is the 4th of our topics. So the topics were brought out of what were the most important things that came out of the survey. So this is water resources and housing are put together because without water, you can't put any housing down. So Michael, after this, will be putting together the actual plan, at which point we will have public hearings on that as well. So you haven't had the best end of us, maybe you've done anything. Take that one.
Thank you. Thank you for that little bridge when I was doing the technical stuff. Just make sure this is. As Sally said, Mike Allen, the Green Growth Planning. My job is to assist the town with updating the comprehensive plan, and part of that is trying to build off of the work that Ann and Allison have been putting together as far as the water and so forth, because a lot of that is going to try and inform what we want to do with housing, because the two are kind of interrelated. So this is the 4th of our topic meetings. This one focusing on housing and natural resources, water in particular, because of the influence that has on our decisions. We put together these topic meetings because after our survey, we looked at some of the results and we wanted to do some follow-up questions, and I want to kind of go through those. And the purpose of my presentation is to pitch some preliminary ideas that I've put together on how we might want to address these issues and get some comments and feedback back. So we're going to read out the survey input, look at some water resource protection strategies, some of which these guys have already covered, housing strategies, and then we'll open it up to a discussion period. For those of you who's joining us online through Google Meet, when we get to the discussion period, we'll try and take turns answering any questions. You can use the raise hand feature down here at the bottom of your screen to let us know you want to talk, or use the chat feature, type in any questions or comments you have, and I'll try and cycle you guys in through as we go through. So some survey input just related to the topics of housing and water right now. In the survey, we asked folks to rank on a scale of like 1 to 7 what they felt the biggest priorities for the town to work on were. Number 1 was protecting farms and the small town rural character of Kinderhook. Number 2, protect drinking water quality and quantity. Part of the reason why we're having this meeting, because that came in second. Number 3 was protecting open space, scenic views and natural areas, which was one of our previous topic meetings. And then 4th was improving availability and affordability of housing options. So these 2 items coming up, ranking up pretty high on the list. We wanted to have a sort of follow-up topic meeting about that. When we asked people, how important do you feel it is to protect the quality and quantity of water, 84% felt that it was very important. That's an astoundingly strong level of support there. When we asked what types of housing do you feel are necessary or needed, what's lacking in Kinderhook, the number 1 answer was some sort of senior living, single apartment style housing. Number 2 was smaller, more affordable starter homes for young families starting out, with the cost of real estate being extremely high right now as it is. Number 3 was rental apartments for young folks starting out, maybe just moving out of the house for the first time, starting a job. These all came in above single family homes, which are the most predominant, about 90% of the housing stock in the area is single-family homes. So these three being what we would probably want to take a look at, figuring out how to propose. When we ask how much do you, how concerned are you about the potential impact of short-term rentals such as Airbnb, VRBO, vacation rental products, about 52% agreed they were concerned, 31% disagreed with that concern. So there seems to be at least some concern that short-term rentals are having an impact on the area, and that's something we'll try and touch on briefly in here. So some survey follow-up questions after we've looked at that is, okay, so if we agree that we want to protect our water and we agree that there's more we can do to address housing affordability and availability, like how should we do that? And I want to pick some ideas that I've been working on with as far as water resources, a lot has already been covered. So the source protection plan that Allison reviewed is going to be very instrumental in identifying the areas of town that we would want to protect and potential contaminants. They would support the adoption of any sort of regulatory actions that we might want to take with regard to zoning or any sort of protective overlays. So their data and recommendations would help inform that. And they, as Allison mentioned, already provide some community support and education about how we can help protect water. One of the things that we can do is development of an overlay district. Those can be established to kind of protect an area of town, which might limit what uses are allowed there, what business commercial uses, whether or not you can have fuel storage tanks or other things, what sort of activities. For reference, the village of Kinderhook has such an overlay. It covers, it has two areas. It has a primary recharge protection area, which is mostly within sort of the village boundaries right in here. And then it has an overall wellhead protection area, which is this whole green area, which extends way out into the town of Kinderhook, even all the way down into the town again. That's the sort of influence area of the watershed where the water is collected, and it all goes into that area. Now, because the village of Kinderhook doesn't have jurisdiction outside its boundaries, the overlay zone which they developed only really takes effect inside their zone, in this hatched area where their zoning, where the town or village boundaries are. That's the only place they actually have jurisdiction, but they're showing us that this whole area can affect all the water that goes into the village wells. So it gives us an idea of, so the green area, none of their law really has any effect on, because it's outside of their jurisdiction. So within this overlay or any other overlay that we might want to look at, it would limit or restrict what types of uses and activities such as petroleum storage or dumping and other sort of considerations that might contaminate the water. So, and also it might provide, we could set it up so it would provide additional review. So if somebody was proposing to build a certain commercial use, let's say, the planning board would possibly be authorized to have an additional review, which would really specifically be looking at any potential water runoff or contamination that could affect the water. There used to be in the town of Kinderhook an environmental overlay district, which did effectively this. It identified areas of the town which we felt were critical to protecting the water and providing some additional controls. However, that overlay district was repealed back in 2014, apparently, based on records. I don't know exactly why. So the town used to have an overlay district for this. I would recommend we revisit that idea and take another look at it, because I think it could be very important. And perhaps during this, we can figure out, backtrack, figure out what the reasons were it was repealed. Obviously, municipal sewer, as already mentioned, would be very helpful. Transitioning from private on-site wells to a municipal system would help eliminate a lot of potential groundwater contamination. So in any place that, particularly if we're looking at a protection area from Allison's work, if there's a way to provide municipal sewer in that area, that would greatly reduce some of the potential contamination. So we can prioritize those areas where that we already have identified for protection. And some of the denser populations around Kinderhook Lake, as mentioned, are obviously prone to this sort of thing. Lastly, and this is more of a nuclear option, if you will, the critical environmental areas. Municipalities do have the ability to identify a certain area in their town and say, this is a critical environmental area because of X, Y, Z, often because of potential water contamination, and they can designate that area as a CEA, which provides much more rigorous environmental control. So it's basically built into the existing Environmental Quality Review Seeker Act. So if any sort of activity were proposed or new construction were proposed that would require seeker review, it would add another layer of review on it specifically for looking at water contamination and mitigating any potential water contamination issues. It's more of an advanced option, and it's usually used for public water supplies, which the town right now does not necessarily have, but I wanted to mention it as a potential for the future. So water resources, some preliminary ideas right now: adopt and implement the source protection plan that Allison's group is working on. I would recommend that. That might even happen before we finish the comprehensive plan. I would also recommend we review and amend the zoning to eliminate any potential conflicts with those protection areas which they have identified. In other words, if we're allowing gas stations, for example, in an area that we also want to protect, maybe we want to revisit that decision and maybe say no more gas stations in that area. Then following that up, adopt an overlay district or districts designed to provide protections for those water source areas that they've identified in the protection plan. Also pursue the creation of municipal sewer systems, particularly if there's an opportunity to put those in areas that we want to already protect. Sewer systems provide us a couple of different options or benefits, and if we can find an excuse to put it in areas we want to protect, that would be even better. And also, I just mentioned the designation of a critical environmental area as one option. So the water, I guess, recommendations or ideas that I have pretty straightforward, I think, but getting into now housing, if we have now looked at what areas of town we want to protect the water, that helps us better understand what areas we might want to look at for housing. So from the survey, if you remember earlier, the top three is most needed, if you will: senior living, senior apartments, smaller, more affordable starter homes, and year-round rentals apartments. We would want to provide options that are both for folks looking to rent housing as well as for folks looking to become homeowners. So we have kind of both sides covered. And we also want to address the needs of the range from everyone from young residents to older residents, perhaps seniors who are looking to downsize, move out of a bigger house into something simpler and easier to maintain. So when we look at the zoning in the town of Kinderhook, the only type of housing that is allowed by right, the green circles are allowed by right, yellow circles are special permit site plan review, red requires a town board rezoning. Single family units are the only types that are allowed by right, and it's also the most common type of housing in the town. The good news is the town already has in the zoning a process by which you can do an accessory apartment, otherwise known as an accessory dwelling unit or in-law apartment, granny flat, goes by many names. You guys are kind of ahead of the curve in that you have already this on the code, the ability to do this. The idea behind that is if you own a single family house, you'd be permitted to build a small, smaller cottage, if you will, on site. It can be attached, detached, inside your house, whatever, on an apartment for literally anyone, but it's often for an older family member or somebody who just needs a rental apartment. Unfortunately, those you require a special permit to get, which is an additional hurdle. It's not the biggest hurdle of all the things that you would need in building something like that, but it's still a hurdle. When we look at two-family dwellings, again, this would be like a duplex. Again, you guys are kind of ahead of the curve. a lot of other communities are starting to say we need to kind of go back to allowing more of these duplexes. You guys do allow them in all the residential and even business districts. But again, they're all by special permit and requiring site plan review, which is often a bigger hurdle and obstacle to this. There are a lot of up and coming new designs for two-family housing. In the state of Vermont right now, we are working on a series of designs of kind of the old pattern book houses where you used to be able to look through a booklet of different home designs and pick one for your family. The state of Vermont is working on a series of pattern book designs for this right now as part of the 802 Homes program, where they're designing a bunch of relatively modest, simple two-family homes that can come in a variety of different kind of styles. This is sort of examples. So the duplexes can maintain a lot of different styles that fit into different neighborhoods. They're generally attractive. You can get two families on one property and kill two birds with one stone. So they can fit into a lot of different sort of types and styles of neighborhoods. And that's something that I think we might want to take a look at, allowing those by right in more places. When it comes to multi-family housing, right now, anything with 3 or more units is considered multifamily. So it doesn't matter if it's 3 units or 100 units, it's all the same thing. And right now, those are only allowed basically in the business districts and the one multifamily overlay district, which is a pretty small sliver of town. I would recommend we, instead of it being 3 and above, because that could be 50 or 100 units, that we might want to take a look at making a new classification of something smaller of just, what about a multifamily that's just 3 or 4 units? That's something that would fit into a lot of other neighborhoods, I think, a lot better. And again, same pattern book idea here. There are many different designs, clever designs, where you can work out 4 different living units in one house that generally just looks like any other house you might find in this region of the world. And so what I might recommend is changing the multifamily designation or land use to anything with 5 or more apartments and just keeping that allowed where it is. But then also then creating a new classification for just multifamily, just 3 to 4 dwelling units, and looking at, well, what neighborhoods might that fit into? So we're not committing to, it could be 100 units, it's just 3 or 4. Maybe we look at whether or not that might be appropriate in the Hamlet or R2 district. That's kind of a baby step. And then also when we start talking about the more rural parts of the town, conservation cluster development is something that is allowed in all of these rural and agricultural rural residential zones. If you're not familiar, that's basically just saying when somebody comes in and does a big subdivision of houses, rather than dividing the whole thing up equally into however many lots and just filling in with houses as many as they can, it's saying, okay, you can take the same number of houses, but we want you to put it on much smaller lots so that you can save some of that land and keep it natural and green and open and wooded and conserved, so it still maintains a more rural look and feel to the area. Right now, those conservation subdivisions are allowed. They, at one point, were required in certain circumstances for very large subdivisions, or if you're doing a housing subdivision on prime agricultural lands. But like the other provision that got repealed many years ago, I would recommend that we look at, again, making it mandatory in certain cases, or maybe major subdivisions, or if they're proposing a subdivision on prime farmland, going back to that being mandatory. So preliminary ideas for uses, making ADUs permitted by right in all districts where you're allowed to do a single family home, making 2-family permitted by right in some districts, possibly the R2 and H district, considering a new classification for multifamily, which is just 3 to 4 units for small apartments in certain districts, and then multifamily would then change to anything 5 or more would be only allowed in the districts where multifamily is allowed right now. Consider new locations for the multifamily overlay district, which I'll show you where it is in a moment. It's in a pretty limited spot up by Kinderhook Lake. Potentially where future water and sewer could be established, and that would support like a more of a multifamily density, if you will. Consider requiring conservation subdivisions again for major subdivisions or large parcels, or perhaps where there's prime farmland. Or new locations for denser housing options, we should look at some of the land use considerations as far as what's environmentally, the environmentally sensitive areas we want to protect. So, for example, where would denser housing go? Denser housing tends to be more efficient, which makes it more affordable, which makes it easier and more accessible to many families. So, right now, multifamily is only allowed in some very limited area, little spots here and there along Route 9. There's the multifamily overlay up there right next to the lake. There's a little slivers here and there. So it's right now, multifamily is only allowed in a very small percentage of the town. So right now, we're looking at where would be appropriate for a multifamily development. We want to avoid any of the more rural and agricultural lands, because back to the survey, what was the number one thing is people want to protect? Open space, farmland, natural scenic views. So we generally want to avoid all of those areas. It would make more sense if multifamily were in this area, in or around the village areas and along the major travel corridors that aren't the more rural areas right now. So if we want to look at those areas, then what within that area, what are the sensitive lands that we want to protect? So we do a kind of an analysis here. Areas we want to avoid are the priority agricultural lands, for one. This has been identified by county planning. They've taken all the agricultural land in the town, divided, prioritized them like in 1 through 5 as how important they are. So you can use that information to say, okay, we don't want to encourage any housing on good farmland. That's number one. Second, be prime soils. Those are the best soils that we have in the area, the best and most suited for farming and agriculture. We want to make sure we don't use those up. Another one would be any of the flood hazard zones that we want to obviously avoid. So other considerations are the wellhead protection zones from rural water and areas we might want to have sewer. So what might this look like? So a quick kind of back of the napkin analysis of, well, how might this rough out? We look at, here we have Kinderhook and Felicia villages. We want to look at sort of this area in general of what might make sense. We have an existing wastewater treatment facility right here next to the river. Recently, that was extended down to serve portions of the village of Kinderhook right now. So with keeping that in mind, we have the villages have this wastewater treatment capability. And if we take this map and we now subtract out all of the lands that are agricultural priorities and rank 1 through 5, just take them off the map, we subtract them from consideration. We then subtract out any of the prime soils in the area, and then we subtract out any of the flood zones, which are kind of covered up by some of this other stuff right here. Subtract out any of those. Whatever's left are more likely areas for consideration where we might want to think about multifamily housing. This area on the south side of the river is a lot of rural agricultural land, whereas the area to the north is generally more developed already. Getting sewer keeping sewer, which is already on the north side of the river anyway, it makes it a little easier. So when we look at these two areas up here, these become candidate areas that we might want to take a look at for multifamily and sewer. So area 1 here, area 2 here, just north of the village. These would have potentially access to the sewer system if we could work out an agreement with the villages where we can work in cooperation with them and say, hey, if we work together to build upon the sewer system, we would have the ability to extend sewer service into those two areas. So one of the nice things about area A is this blue area here is the wellhead protection area for the village right here that I had shown in one of my earlier maps. A lot of that overlaps into this area, so if we were to provide sewer in area 1, that would provide some additional protection to the wellhead protection area. Kill two birds with one stone. So that's one area. This area is Route 99H right here. So we have Hannaford up here, the high school. Right now, most of this is already zoned business, which already allows multifamily. But extending sewer into this area would also have the ability for helping to promote some of our economic development goals, which are encouraging some more redevelopment in this commercial area anyway. So this would be an area where I would recommend we take a look at possibly rezoning or providing some more sewer, as well as this area here. There's some constraints in between, such as some farmland and flooding areas that I'm not sure if you can connect these, but maybe. So those would be the two areas. So that's my kind of rough analysis, if you will, of trying to identify where in town does it make scientific sense to put more multifamily housing. So land use changes, the preliminary ideas is identifying these areas adjacent to the village where we think it would make sense to put in water and sewer to support some of this housing. Consider these areas for new multifamily zones or overlays. Looking for opportunities to expand that water and sewer service where we can, if we can coordinate and work cooperatively with the village government. And then also, it may go without saying, but I think part of this, even though we don't have jurisdiction over the village, is encouraging the village to do their part as well toward addressing these same goals. How can the village look internally to their operations and say, what can we do to also address the housing needs in the area? So that's what I would recommend. Some other housing strategies, ideas really quickly. The concept of cottage courts, which is something I've been sort of championing for a bit of a while. The concept is clustering a lot of very small cottages on small little parcels where maybe they all share a common green space area. They don't all have their own driveways and garages. Maybe some of them they share a shared parking area, shared trash, maybe a shared post office area. That allows for a much more efficient, compact area use of the land, where you can get a bunch of little cottages very closely together. It can be small scale. It fits into a lot of smaller scale neighborhoods. This is very popular among seniors who are looking at downsizing something simple. It doesn't have a lot of maintenance, and maybe it's only one story or so. You can have a lot of different house configurations for this. It puts a lot of single-family homes, if you will, into a small area of land because of the sort of efficient layout, and kind of shares. It's also good for sort of a communal feeling where you get to know your neighbors. And then you can also do this concept with duplexes, some of the duplexes I mentioned before. Get the same sort of effect, but it's a more efficient use of land, and I find that might be useful. Even though it's a denser residential development, it doesn't have the scale of a big housing project. Another idea more for the rural areas is the concept of single lot exemptions. The basic idea of this, say this is your property, you have 5 acres, not the scale, but you're in a 5-acre zone, you can't subdivide right now. The idea of a single lot exemption would be to grant all the property owners in a district the opportunity to get like a one-time voucher. You can subdivide once to make a small lot that you wouldn't normally be otherwise allowed to. So maybe they're in a 5-acre or a 3-acre zone. They, with the single lot exemption, would be allowed to carve out, let's say, one acre, smaller, more affordable lot for someone. Sometimes it's their family member, sometimes it's not, where they can build a small, more affordable home. But the key to this is rather than changing the lot, reducing the lot size is like an entire district, which I think would just cause mayhem. It's just allowing everybody the option to do one, rather than changing the minimum lot sizes, which I would recommend this over reducing lot sizes, so. And then short-term rentals, because this came up in the survey, some different options, leaving things as is, allowing people to conduct business in short-term rentals as they have been. Second option might be to develop some sort of a basic registration or a permit system without any rules or restrictions on how they operate, but a basic registration system so we can at least understand what's out there, how many short-term rentals are in operation, how big is the, what type of house is it? Is it a 4,000 square foot house, or is it like a 800 square foot apartment? Basic understanding of what that is, just so we can kind of keep track of how things are and if there are any problems. The next step beyond that would then maybe being, would we want to instead require a permit and then have some sort of additional limits and regulations? For example, Village of Kinderhook, right now, they require a permit for all short-term rentals and site plan approval before they can get a permit. And they also have some additional requirements, such as they limit the total number of non-hosted. So in other words, the homeowner isn't on site when they're renting. So a non-hosted, they cap those at 12 in the entire village. And then if you let your permit expire, there's a waiting list to get back on the system. So I apologize, I rushed through that, but I wanted to give that to folks. And I want to open it up to any questions right now, real quick.
I got a quick one for you.
Yeah.
The second zone that you mentioned up there, you didn't mention where that was. You said the first one was up north of Hannaford. The zones 1 and 2.
Oh, when we were looking at the zones for multifamily, yes.
Yeah, where's that second area? Just couldn't see
Let me go back to that slide. Boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
There we are. Okay. So the green area, you can see.
Well, actually, the next slide had the 1 and 2 on it.
I think it's
This one.
Yeah,
That one.
I think it wasn't the same?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is 1, this is 2.
Yeah.
That's it.
So-
This says Garrett.
Oh, New Garrigan Road.
Oh, there it comes. That runs up on,
That's
Yeah.
on
Garrett.
203. Is that 203? on your
Well,
end?
203.
There's 203 up there.
Upper
And then
Main.
This is Garrett Road.
Okay.
So this would be, think about Crane School, this large parcel here.
Okay.
Right up here. Then McDonald's is right in this vicinity, correct?
Yeah, it was the other, number 2
Yeah.
of this one. That was my
Yeah.
question.
Where is this one?
Okay, so that is the R2, I believe.
That's Garrett, it's off of Garrett Road.
Between
So,
28 and 203.
yeah,
Oh, I'm fine. I've been sitting way too much.
And for-
Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't see it. That's what I'm, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had to get a reference point.
Yeah, no, it's.
So I know that was a lot. I gave you a fire hose of information. I apologize, but wanted to say these are some of the ideas that I'm right now considering. And before we go too far down the road, wanted to see what people thought. Yes, ma'am.
I've got a few comments. One, your cottage concept, I really like the idea of a parcel of land where there's a shared green space. Particularly being here in the Northeast, I'm not crazy about the idea of having a remote parking lot. There was some URV development, I think it was done in Morristown, New Jersey, where it was a similar thing, where they had a ring, almost like an alleyway around the residential section so that people could have their garages near their homes, especially if we're talking about seniors with groceries or something like that. But it allowed for the green space in between the houses, so they're all facing into that green space still.
But the vehicle access is kind of hidden in back.
Yes.
Okay.
With regard to the AUDs or the single lot exceptions.
Yep.
Enforcing setbacks so that you maintain a comfortable distance between dwellings. And so that you also maintain that open space. That is something that's very nicely done in this area. Coming from the south, I've seen plenty of developments where houses are literally 5 feet apart. Along with that, I would recommend something in the zoning that enforces some sort of variety of housing, because that's another thing that we see often in the south, is that it's a cookie cutter, where it's the same house every lot. And
Some of those examples were kind of cookie cutter.
they were, but they were beautifully done. The ones that I've seen down south, they're literally the same building, one by another, with anywhere minimal space between, because they can do a planned unit development, or I think they call it a housing unit development, and they've got to work out down there that if they do that, they can bypass the zoning codes that are otherwise applicable. So we just need to make sure that we're still able to enforce those.
Okay. Sorry, I believe the gentleman in the blue jacket was
Yeah.
next.
What is the price range for affordable housing now?
That's the question.
And I'm in the trades, and I've seen, I mean, it's on steroids now. The price is going up, and then I talk to guys in the trades, and they're like, the prices just go up and up, you know, of labor, material, et cetera. So
Yes.
what is affordability? And then with that, because then I'm also wondering, I'll say it, there's a healthy competition between people with limited means and then those coming in with boatloads of cash. And, you know, one man's affordable is another man.
Right. Another man's dream.
Unattainable dream.
Right.
So that's my,
No, that's
What
that's
is
a good
affordable?
question. What's affordable is a wide-ranging scale depending on everybody's, life. As a municipality, we don't have control over the private sector,
right.
so we can't necessarily control what the private sector is willing to do. The best we can do is control certain levers of what's allowed and what's not allowed, and try and entice developers to. We can set the table and hope that they will come and build it. We can't necessarily dictate what they're going to build unless we start to. We can have incentives to say if you make a certain number of your housing units meet a standard, make it, the standard is no one should be really paying more than 30% of their income on their housing costs. So for example, if we were to say, if you voluntarily provide us with some percentage of these units as, meeting that threshold, then we would provide you some, something in return, maybe a density bonus or something. The other option is just requiring it right off the bat. My general concern with that is that is generally just going to be a deterrent. And if we require something, it's just going to scare them away from doing anything. So I'd rather get something. Our main goal is to increase, or my main goal is to increase the diversity of types of housing. Because right now, when everything's a single family housing on whatever size acre lots, they're all going to be the same price. They're all going to be expensive. So if we can encourage more diversity and different lot sizes and more efficient layouts, I believe we can get the affordability more in reach of more people. How many people? I don't know.
Thank you.
Yep. Ma'am, in the way.
I have, excuse me, several concerns. I hope I remember all of them as they come up. But number one, was there a study undertaken to determine that there is a need for more housing? Because as soon as 5 people can't afford a house that's for sale, all of a sudden we need more housing. So that's my first question. As it pertains to the areas that you've indicated may be better suited for a more cluster type housing, if you agree that we need more housing, has there been a study on the infrastructure being able to handle additional housing needs? I know we're going through some growth in the systems in the village of Kinderhook now, and the costs are exorbitant. And would it put so much pressure on these small community systems that we're now looking at budgets that are through the roof, which actually make problem affording this housing even more.
Right.
And then as far as your issue of 2 to 4 units versus 5 units plus, I would maybe suggest that the 5 units plus not be considered multi-family, but commercial. And therefore you, in this new jurisdiction where you can have 1 to 2, 2 to 4 residential homes, which can be financed with residential financing, making them a little more accessible versus 1 commercial spot there or 2 commercial spots there, which is anything over 4+ units. So you're not putting 7 clusters of 50 units in one section. Now that water system went down the hill again.
Okay. To your question about whether there was a study on what the housing needs are, there wasn't a study specifically for Kinderhook. There have been multiple studies throughout New York State and the country about this issue, that the costs of housing and living have been skyrocketing, and especially since COVID.
I think
But it
that
hasn't been specific to this area.
it plays into the demographics of the country at this moment, where there are more people retiring every day than births. So automatically we could assume that every place needs more senior housing because of the longevity issue and the low birth rates. But I would say to isolate the community before we run and jump to build housing that maybe we didn't need or won't need, it seems like it's a more prudent way to address this housing issue, not to assume we have a crisis, but to find out really who's looking and why they can't find what they need.
Okay. To your point about the capacity of the infrastructure, obviously, if we were to pursue the idea of coordinating with the village and working with them to expand their existing sewer so we can both benefit from it, there would have to be a capacity study to do. This is a preliminary idea. We would have to obviously run those numbers and figure out what's actually possible, and do we need to expand their existing system to take on additional capacity, et cetera. I didn't run those numbers. I'm not an engineer. I'm more of an idea guy. But to your point, yes.
I just want to say here, in doing this, there's a lot of state money there funding futures. Housing is a priority in the state now, if you haven't heard from the governor on down. And so there is money available for TA, technical assistance, and just looking at the infrastructure. That's all. There's one whole grant, just TA, just engineering. What do you need? Water? What do you need? Housing? Well, this is the grant program. You sachet up half the money. We'll give you the other half. We'll have people come out and tell you what so you can figure out what you need.
Good to know. It seems like maybe the grant applications could be made for the current infrastructure improvements rather than pounding the heads of the individual homeowners now, saying,
Yes.
now you're retiring, you're a senior, now you have an overlay of several $1,000s because you need a new water system, but that's because we need new neighbors. So it sort of is a little bit of a cart before the horse in my personal thinking.
And I just want to say what's really needed is for citizens like y'all to be involved in the process. So come to board meetings every month, put your desires before the board and follow up on it. If you don't participate, you're not going to get nothing.
For all of you that came here today, because it was a rainy, awful day out, joke's on you, it's now sunny out. But thank you.
The Sunday meeting was very helpful.
Yes.
I have one question for you, and then I'd like to go back to water issues, if I may.
Sure.
Please, so I come from Massachusetts. In my town, we couldn't build anything more than 2 units without the units being on a public water system because of the sprinkler system. So how can you build any public housing or multi-family housing without it being on town water? Is it different here?
Well, I guess it just depends on how many units there are.
So what's the,
Again, it goes back to the residential versus commercial too. In a residential multifamily, you don't need full sprinkler systems by code. Once you get over 4 units, you need commercial grade water sprinkling systems for fire safety. That's why I meant to make the determination also, because it's critical to the infrastructure of what you're building.
Sure.
So you couldn't do more than 4 units though without being on town water. A
Well,
multifamily.
there are options to do it without that, but they tend to be rather costly.
Yeah.
They tend to be more expensive, yes.
And then if I could address some water things, please. So I moved up to on the south end of the lake a year and 2 months ago. And I bought a quote unquote affordable house, knowing I'd have to put some money into it to rehab it. But then 3 months after I moved in, the well went out. So I had to.
You
drill.
dried up or?
It was on the way out.
Okay.
And it went out. So I had to drill a 400-foot well. Martin is my new friend because he was at my house so much. Yeah, so I'm about 50 grand in, new well, tank, complete home water filtration system, including the giant charcoal thingy, methane extractor in the front wall closet, I lost that, RO under the kitchen sink. I feel very confident about drinking and using my water now. There are 8 houses total on my street. 2 of us have complete home water systems. The other 6 houses do not, and I know they do not drink their water. And this is the south end of the lake. And it's very concerning because one of the things in the town regs or charter that I read was that the town of Kinderhook in Niagara is invested in people properly disposing of their household hazardous waste and not having junk in their lawns. Like I walk a lot around the lake streets. There are some houses that are nothing but junk, and I'm wondering. So this is an aside, how we can start enforcing the removal of some. I mean, there's vehicles, there's
An
RVs.
enforcement issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really, and I feel badly for the people that have to look at it and live next door to some of these places. And then there seems to be an inordinate amount of abandoned and condemned buildings. And I don't know if that's because they had water problems and they left. I mean, obviously the roofs aren't too good on those, but there are a lot of abandoned and condemned buildings in the south end of the lake.
Okay.
And if anybody needs town sewer, water and sewer, it's up by the lake.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to clarify, maybe Martin can also clarify, was the need to drill the new well, was that a quantity issue or a quality
Oh, no,
issue?
the other one just, it was 40 foot deep, it just gone dead. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, yeah.
Okay.
I'm 40 feet, yeah. I'm 400 feet now.
Right.
400.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
If you back up and start to define what affordable housing is, you
Mhm.
really need to start with an elementary discussion about it, because affordable housing can mean you can't drink the water and there's no septic system. Versus affordable housing means it's a brand new structure and it's a lower priced home because of XYZ. So that definition is critical in all of this discussion.
Okay.
I just had a comment to that. I've heard elsewhere a school of thought of thinking about affordable housing as like local essential worker housing. So could a teacher's aide at the school afford to live there? Could your mail carrier afford to live there? Could a server at a local hospitality place afford to live there? Like, I think when you think in those terms, it's a little clearer,
Based on their salaries, what the salaries of these people are.
Right.
Yeah,
Not
I
a
think
condition
so.
of home.
The workforce
Yeah.
housing.
Okay. Yes, in the back.
I'm with New York Rural Water. I just wanted to make a comment. As many of you may know, our headquarters isn't far from here. I live 5.5 hours southwest of here. And I just to throw it out there, because I know how it is. I live in a small town, and traveling for work has been the best thing that happened for me at home, because everything was negative, bad when I lived there, and now that I go to the other places and go home, I see all the good. I just wanted to make a comment. I come here often to go to our office. This area is grown. I don't know how they get our number, but I received it. I want to say, I've no lie, I've probably received 50 calls in the last 3 years regarding the town of Glacier, town of Kinderhook, wanting to buy property and build. Just inquiring about water issues. So I just want to survey. I'm not trying to steer anybody anyway. I think every comment that's been made is good, but sometimes when you see something every day, you kind of lose the attractiveness of it. And I think maybe a lot of people could benefit from taking a step back and looking at your town and realizing how beautiful it is and how much growth there has been. When I go to our office, I remember it's right across from the West Kent Fire Hall. I can remember when it was a dirt road and there was 2 buildings on it. And now look at it. So just throwing that out there. And again, the other thing I would say is go to your town board meetings. Question about the water system and the junk around the lake. That really needs to be addressed.
You got a question on it. We took from the 2020 census a decrease in the population in the town of Kinderhook, which is why we started asking, like, why are people leaving? And then, like, my son's looking for a house, and he's like, I can't afford it. Right, so he lives in Albany County. He's like, I love, but no. It works for the state. So, yeah, affordability means different things to different people, but I think our knee-jerk reaction was all our kids have left. Why? Well, maybe it is affordability, or maybe it's just job location, who knows? But that, with the reduction in the census, we got a little concerned. So I think and then people said housing was a concern on the survey, which is why we're talking about it. Just so you know where that came from.
Just please don't forget the beauty and the charm of the communities you live in. I love coming to our office because it is beautiful.
Thank you.
Who else hasn't gone yet?
Anybody?
Anybody?
I have a question about the water testing. This is
Okay.
done on the wells. Do you have data on PFOAs? Do they come up, those are tested for, and do they come up with the results?
We don't test for PFOA. We conducted all those tests,
Because I know in New York
PFOA.
State, the levels are being discussed as being pretty high.
Right, and that, those tests are extremely expensive.
Right.
They can be sometimes upwards of $700 just for that one analyte. So that, and, it can be quite complicated in regards to if you find it. So, with this program that we're doing, we're really kind of hitting a lot of the, basic, most common analytes that are most likely to
Well, I know
encounter.
the idea is if you have reverse osmosis, you're supposed to be protected from this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it would be good for people who own a house and have a well, to have information to know what they're pulling out of the ground.
So there is a new program that was just started. It's a pilot program with the New York State Department of Health. It's not within our bureau. It's a separate part of the department. And they're starting with some of the southern counties to do some sampling and remediation. We can see how that goes. And depending on how that evolves, they'll hopefully be able to spread around the state with that.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
So how much of that land is available to build on in the multifamily overlay?
Not very much. A lot of it's already been developed. There are some parcels up in this area that are potential candidates that are currently undeveloped. Large parcels right now, from what I understand, they have very high price tags on them for sale. And that's why, part of the reason maybe they haven't moved, but there are, in some of the other areas, we'd probably be looking at over time, some of the existing places phasing out and getting replaced by something new. So this isn't something that is going to happen quickly. It's going to sort of evolve over time. But part of what we're trying to do is kind of think ahead 20 years.
Yeah.
So that's
Or
the
you buy
idea.
up your neighbors, buy up a group of homes and tear them down and build a
That's
multifamily home.
that's possible. Yes.
That's what your thought is.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, that was me. I just have a statement I'd like to read. I'm here, my name's David Willens. I'm a resident in Kinderhook Lake community. I'm also serve on the board of directors for the Kinderhook Lake Corporation. We're the nonprofit that manages the lake and the dam. But I want to be clear that I'm talking about this afternoon things that are, as a neighbor and a resident, not an official representative of the corporation, but so many of these things flow through. I knew this was coming. We've been active trying to support both the village and with the town in efforts from the Lake Corporation side. But I just wanted a couple of points regarding lake water quality. and well water quality. It'll be quick. Kinderhook is one of the town's most valuable natural and recreational assets, but it's under pressure. Stormwater runoff carries nutrients, sediments, and pollutants from roads, lawns, and developed properties and drains into the lake with little filtration. Compounding this is the prevalence of aging and poorly maintained septic systems in the lakeshore community. Systems that were designed for decades ago for a smaller, less intensive use of watershed. The result is nutrient loading that promotes algae and weed growth and degrades the water quality for swimming, fishing, and wildlife. The comprehensive plan is the right place to address this. I urge the committee to consider policies that require regular septic system inspection and maintenance, support upgrade or shared septic systems where feasible, and prioritize stormwater management improvements around the lake. Longer term, I ask the committee to study the feasibility of extending municipal sewer service to the lake community as a lasting solution. And then regarding water, well water quality, residents in the lake community rely on private wells, and the quality of that water is a growing concern. Elevated sulfur and salt levels have been reported in many wells throughout the neighborhood. Sulfur renders water unpleasant and raises health questions. Elevated salt, likely from road treatment and other sources, is a year-round concern that worsens over time. Private well owners bear the cost and burden of treatment systems that address the symptoms, but not the underlying problem. Here again, the comprehensive plan could help set the direction. I ask the community to support a formal study of well water conditions specifically in the Kinderhook Lake area, and to plan seriously for the extension of municipal sewer water service, municipal water service to residents who currently have no alternative. In closing, Kinderhook Lake and the people who live around it are a community worth investing in. Clean water in the lake and in our homes is not a luxury. It's a basic quality of life issue that a forward-looking comprehensive plan should take seriously. Thank you for the time and for the future planning.
Thank you. Could I have a copy of that?
Yeah.
Because that way I don't have to type. I don't have to type all that stuff. Okay. I just want to make sure we get some other folks who haven't had a chance to speak yet. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Chris, you could just change
In the fall, the media was told that DOT was negotiating with environmental conservation to use less salt on the state highways. I live on US Route 9, and my observation this winter was that they used less salt, did more plowing, and they did a wonderful job of keeping it bare blacktop. But my question is, do you have knowledge of this program, and have you seen any difference in your testing with sodium and chloride in the wells?
So we haven't worked directly with them, and we are limited to these analytical tests. There are ways to test to see potentially where the salt is coming from, by what ions are attached to it. So that's something that you could consider talking to DOT or the environmental conservation about.
Okay. Yes, in the white jacket. Did you had your hand up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the issue that I wanted to speak to was there are concentrations of areas in Columbia County and the village of Kinderhook and Valatia which are really in need of help, and homeowners who are additionally in need of help. So adding new housing on top of these problems is personally not a great idea. And to the history of the county and being what it was, in 1972, the New York Times ran an article on the 10 most beautiful places in the country to live. Columbia County was number 10 that year, and that brought a first influx of the major group of people that came. Since then, our county has been considered an affordable place to come and live, largely because of the large open space in rural areas. So I don't think there's anyone that lives here that doesn't know and understand and appreciate and respect the beauty, which is why we all live here. My family came in 1941 from the city, and since 1972, there have been waves of immigrants, people who come into the county. COVID brought a lot of people looking to escape the rural or urban areas. So the capitulations in population are always going to continue. There are going to be different impetus to make people want to come to rush here, but to just jump in to form plans about new construction, I don't believe is the way to go. Given the discussion over Kinderhook Lake and the problems that exist there now, if there are such grants available for state infrastructure in the areas that exist, I would be in favor of having those areas looked at first for input for money. And having Sunday meetings is very helpful for people who do reside here, but travel a lot, come and go. And that's been a very big boon of maybe why the meeting turnout was such. It's Sunday. I want to thank you and the other people for committing to a Sunday, your afternoon off. But it's been very helpful.
Thank you. If you just want to pass that along to my wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Just a small follow-up, just on the dam part for the lake. When we flood down, or our dam releases down through the Kinderhook Creek and flows through most of those areas that we're demonstrating there.
Right.
So the things I speak to in terms of the runoffs, the concentration of fertilizers, all the sulfates, the untreated, it's all flowing straight through. So it must be hitting some of the other aquifers and so forth along the way. So
Yes.
it's a problem that needs to be addressed. I just forgot to put it in.
Yeah, no, it's, you can see parts of it, some of these pink areas you can see, that's some
Well,
of the floods.
you don't really have it up on the map so much, but the lake feeds out through the south end at the
Yep.
Niagara Dam, which is what we own and maintain. But the water flows right from, it comes from Nassau Lake, it flows through us, it works its way down. It's a comprehensive line through. Of course, it comes through the village of Valatia, and it comes through into the Kinderhook Creek, and there's redesign plans that they're thinking about to want to make their park, a water park along the creek beds and so forth. Sally, you're familiar with that, I think. So it's all kind of tied in, and we want to cooperate and help with those things. It's kind of been difficult to have that all happen.
Okay.
I
Yes.
have a comment because of Kinderhook Lake and what you're talking about. There was a documentary made by Barbara Ruina, who was a Register Star reporter. It's about the Dewey Lawful landfill. And
That's up in
it's
Nassau Lake.
double the chemicals that were in Love Canal. Dewey Lawful had it there. It made polluted Nassau Lake. It goes down, it slows down, it goes into the Kinderhook Lake, and then eventually into the Kinderhook Creek and down into the Hudson River. But if you get a chance to see this 15-minute presentation that she made on the Dewey Lawful landfill and the effect that it has on water, and water right here, right over here, coming down into the Kinderhook Creek. And, what is the PCV level or whatever you call it, forever chemicals in Kinderhook Lake?
Yeah, those are we're tested, we know that.
And when you think the Dewey Lawful landfill was double the chemicals put into Love Canal, this should be a awakening for the town of Kinderhook altogether.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely agree with that.
Yes, ma'am.
So to the point of, I think it's the David Williams,
Yes.
for the corporation, and I think on the survey, I'm sorry, Sally.
No.
Oh, sorry. The surveys had something about the Kinderhook Lake and water quality, I think, if I'm remembering. And I think the results were pretty low on interest or importance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties into what David's talking about, because if you don't live on a lake, you don't like water. But the fact is, the town should care because of the water quality.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you go about educating people or telling people that.
That's how you do that.
Well, what I mean, I'm talking about the town of Kinderhook population had, the survey didn't know that, I guess, people responded.
No, I mean.
That was my take on it. Do you
I
think
just want
okay?
Okay, one of the things that New York Rural Water does is they did this great report. They did all this 1.5 years worth of work, but they're not going away. Like, they're around. So for public education,
they'll partner with us. And they even recommended like a water board be created so that you can focus on this year round and educate the public. Because, you know, people are still saying to me, you can't have septic because it'll raise our taxes. And I'm like, no. Septic is only charged to the people who use it, you know. So yeah.
You mean sewer?
Sewer.
I'm sorry, sewer, septic. I have a septic tank, you can tell, right? Yeah.
Sounds fine.
One thing about the septic too, I remember, this is also for David, I think, well, for the lake people. That, I think it was back in the 80s, we did like a group, like, a price reduction on having our septic tanks pumped and inspected.
And purchase. Yeah.
So that way there was a group and that was a good way to get people to do it and it didn't cost them.
You like sign up as a.
It was like a group purchase.
Oh,
So
that's a
yeah,
good
we
idea.
do that, maybe the corporation could
So we've been
do
encouraging it.
something like that.
We do put out on our website, we mention that people have your septics done. Personally, I have my septic pumped 4 times a year. I'm just anal about it. I have a small piece of property. I don't have very good feel for anything to leach through. I just have my septic pump. To me, that would be sewer hookup charges. I would gladly pay the same amount of money to have a sewer system and not have it go through, but that's me. Again,
But for the people on the lake, if you could offer some kind of a,
we can't offer anything. I mean, we had a company that was doing that for a
like you
while.
can have Baldwin say, hey, we'll
Yeah.
charge you less if you get, you know, 10
Yeah,
people.
and we try to encourage it.
Question, do you know who was behind that program? The sort of group buy-in?
Well, there were companies that are out, so the couple of names that, you know, I've been around a little bit on the lake too, and Billy Baldwin was doing something, Alvaro Park Septic was doing it.
With any of them.
But they all will do something, that their
Like-
fees have tripled.
The actual septic.
Yeah.
It's not like companies come out and pump like a whole street, if everybody's interested. It's just volunteer, not everybody's interested in doing it.
So is that a formal program? It was more of like,
Yes.
Yeah.
You can do like a co-op, like they
It's
do
like a
for
co-op.
heating tool.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
heating.
That's a good idea.
Less money.
And it also is, if you're like me, just, it's a good reminder, like, I'll forget. So it's like a good reminder, like, oh, we're all supposed to get together and do that. So, okay.
Pump your septic day.
Yeah.
I'd like to follow up on a comment from my neighbor, who we haven't met yet. We too live on Kinderhook Lake, and I brought to the attention of the town council several times about my concern about not only the blight, but also the abandoned buildings. We have several houses in our area that have been abandoned for more than a decade. There's a concern there in terms of safety. We've seen young people in them. But more importantly, more importantly, is the issue of, we talked about housing supply. I know there's a concern about building more housing. This is existing housing that's sitting there. In some instances, unfortunately, it's now in a tear down situation. But those could be starter homes for young families. So addressing the issue of housing supply, but also addressing the issue of blight. So I think it's a matter of code enforcement. It's also a matter of incentives.
Okay, thank you. So, we could look into what's the status of some of those houses, like why are they just sitting vacant? Is there?
Yeah.
Once you pay your taxes, right?
They don't give a shit.
And one has been sitting near us for, it's going on 15 years. It's a few.
Yeah, that's.
Why
Which is sad.
Yes.
In regard to the abandoned buildings and the housing issue, the county task force on housing has a project currently to identify the abandoned houses. So the town should be in contact with the CEDC and get more information. I'm sure they'd be all for that. What's the organization that's looking at that? It's the Columbia County Housing Task Force. It's under the county CEDC.
Economic Development Council.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, that's.
Okay. So they're looking at identifying, vacant zombie properties. Okay, thank you. That's what we call them, zombie properties. They just.
It is a going project, so you should get in.
Okay, I was not aware of that. Thank you. Yes.
I guess the question is that, considering we're going back to the issue of the septic systems and the impact in terms of health, what's the possibility of the role of the health department? And
either requiring annual cleaning or checking on it or something, because it affects all of us. So if my neighbor's not taking care of their septic system and it's impacting the lake or it's impacting my property, what might be? I mean, I'm really
That's a good question. I should probably leave that question to the folks at Department of Health. But I don't think it's all right now on a voluntary self-policing system right now. Nobody's going out and checking, probably because it's difficult, checking to make sure everyone's septic tank is being cleaned out. So right now, it's kind of on a self-policing voluntary system that until your septic system visibly fails, and there's signs of it, then nobody knows that anything's wrong. Unfortunately, most of the time they fail, you don't realize it anyway.
Well,
We
it's
have
easy
seen, like-
to see if someone's septic has been pumped, you just make it a requirement that you have to prove the guy was there, show me the receipt.
You gotta have an HOA or something like that.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Government cannot step in and enforce that.
They can't. The Department of Health can't. They can't.
Let's hear from.
Sorry, real quick.
Yeah, if you want to reach out to the Columbia County, the local health department, they might be the best to reach out to because they're familiar with the area.
Yeah, they are concerned with water too. The county climate smart committee, the Department of Health. I have a question for Martin. Can I butt in? Where was the spread of wells that you tested? Like what did it, I know you tried to get it.
We did our best to try to get a big picture. We did concentrate some around that areas of concern around the lake, a few of the peninsulas. And we also looked around the area where the fertilizer storage area was. Again, the biggest spot that we saw an issue was the southern end of the lake.
Okay.
And that was the salt.
Okay, all right. So, but you didn't get up this way, really. You didn't get.
We got some.
Did you?
We have maps. Rural
Okay,
water
good.
has maps.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure, because again, it's not just, I keep saying this, it's not just the lake.
No. And we got around the farms.
Yeah.
We got over there by the apple farm.
Yeah,
All that.
apple orchards.
We
Yeah.
definitely spread it out.
Okay, thank you. Just so everybody knows, it's not just the lake. I live on the lake, so I'm like, it's not just where I get everything else. Be concerned, test them regularly.
Yeah.
There's somebody.
Yeah.
So not that that's Kinderhook Lake, but if you go up to Lake George, they have strict regulations that have to do with the septic. You don't get a leach field. You get a tanks are being pumped out once, twice, sometimes 3 times in the summer, depends on how busy the houses are. And it's all monitored through the Lake George Park Commission. So if you've had a park commission or a lake commission or what have you, and there has to be registered. Everybody gets a sticker every year. And you pay a small fee to be a part of that. And that includes all this other stuff. And we sell out there, and you can see there's definitely maintenance to all those septic areas where these people own septic houses, wells.
So that has some sort of built-in monitoring system as
I
part of
believe
the.
they have a monitoring system. They're very particular. If you go up there, it's Lake George is what the
Cleanest lake.
cleanest lake in America, maybe.
Yeah.
It was once recently voted that. You can't get on the lake unless your boat's inspected. You can't do anything. There are people inspecting boats over boat launches. They're very particular about what goes on that lake, and it starts with the organization that puts the park commission or the park commission. We're part of the park commission, my wife and I, every year. We pay, we put it in. I get the regulations. I'm online. I see what they're doing.
Are you required when you live on the lake to join that commission?
Yes, the commission that does
The commission doesn't do this, but it's part of their thing. They're protecting the land outside of the watershed.
Is it voluntary?
It seems to be voluntary. So I'm saying it because
I have somebody who can speak to it.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I used to be one of those inspection stewards. I did it at Saratoga Lake. So Saratoga Lake, they have the Saratoga Lake Protection and Improvement District, which is kind of like an analog to that Lake George thing you were talking about. But Cornell Cooperative Extension runs these inspection stations for boats all across the state. Really, they have like a program for that. And what those are inspecting, like those aren't inspecting anything as far as like leaky gas or anything like that. Those are strictly just for invasive species inspections. And then so they also at Saratoga Lake, they did something too where they installed a pressure washer station at that same spot where you get your boat checked. So if you do have, and they heat that water to 162. So, if you do have, you see hydrilla, which can be extremely damaging and very fast spreading, or, Eurasian water milfoil, water chestnuts, what have you, you can hit the boat with that pressure washer on the way in or on the way out as like a complimentary thing. And that is kind of like an on-site decontamination for the crafts. But you can probably talk to Cornell Cooperative Extension.
I know, I met those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But does that include either Lake George or Saratoga? Does that include any sort of septic monitoring?
Yeah.
Not with those. That stuff is just for invasive species, which is water
But I
quality.
think that, like on Saratoga Lake, I know that a lot of the houses around the lake are all rebuilt now. They started as camps and they expanded them in
Some
year-round homes. As soon as that happens, that's when the inspections go down on the septic, and they increase the regulations that require someone to have a septic system.
Some of them, some of them, they do still have problems with septic. I would say those septic problems are pretty widespread. You probably go to any water body in your
A lot of those homes, I mean, obviously started out as small, seasonal camps. Obviously, they in many cases still have kind of their same septic footprint, but they added 4 or 5 bedrooms to the house. So that does put a lot of strain on the system. Yes.
Sorry, but, so because Kinderhook Lake is such a large body of water, I think the largest we have here in the 2 towns that we're speaking of, that would be a perfect reason to get a grant from the state of New York to put in baffling systems and tank systems to take every house that has private well and private septic around Kinderhook Lake to the tank system, and then have the association monitor. I know at Lake George, they do water testing very frequently. It's always a public report. And just to keep that system monitored, because it's the largest body of water, rather than putting houses around it now, exacerbating any of those issues.
Okay.
Yeah, the first step is the water and sewer. Figure out those things, then the housing development.
And then the votes later on about the invasive species.
Now, my understanding was that some years ago, the town enacted a prohibition on any more seepage pits around the lake. Is that correct?
Any more what?
Seepage pits.
What is that?
It's basically like instead of a septic tank or a field, it's more of a vertical pit for the sewage to go into. The problem being, because it's lower, it's closer to the water table, there's less opportunity for filtration and stuff through the earth. So I believe, if my research is right, the town did enact some sort of prohibition on any more of those, but I don't know how many.
Those have been outlawed in the state for a long time. You can't have a house that doesn't have a formal septic system.
Right.
Unless it predates the zoning requirement of 1974, I believe.
Mhm.
So if you buy a house that has a bad system, it can be replaced, but it's gonna be updated. They'll never put in a new seepage pit. That's an old fashioned way to deal with septic.
Right.
Seepage
pit, yes. Any other? I'm not kicking anybody out, but I want to make sure I cover a couple things. So we can continue with this, but I want to make sure I get a couple of things. One is, so the next step is really, now we're going to be taking a lot of the input we got from these meetings and the survey and start to develop some draft recommendations and strategies, some of which I already kind of shared today, and then sitting down with the committee and hashing out, which ones we want to pursue, which ones we want to not pursue, so forth. And then we would then be presenting what I like to do is present our draft recommendations first without getting into the plan, because the recommendations that would be in the plan, get some public feedback. You guys can say yes, no, and then we'll take that input and then go draft it and then present that final. So, but there's a couple more steps to this, but The idea is to try and kind of whittle down what we feel is appropriate. And if I did my slides right here, we still have our project web page set up right now. It's this web address. We're going to use the QR code here. We provide info about where we are in the project, what's going on, meeting info, announcements, and also there's a comment form. So if you get home later and you think of something else you want to say, or you know somebody who couldn't attend, they can use the link on the comment form to send in comments. I check it periodically, look for any new comments, and share that with the board. So I want to make sure I got those two things before you guys all ran out.
So there's two. So, yeah, just to wrap this up, so understand that we will have two more public meetings. One will be the draft, and then one will we do the final. And then the town board, the town council, which I'm a member of, will actually have to vote on that plan. Once we vote on it, it's now a strategic plan that we would use for the next, it's supposed to be 10, 15 years out. And we will prioritize these recommendations, just so that you understand. And the recommendations will be on these different topics, housing, recreation, the different things that we looked at. So just so you know that you're going to hear about two more meetings that we hope you all will come back to, because this has been a really good.
We'll try and pick a rainy day.
We'll pick a rainy day. Yeah,
Rainy Sunday.
Rainy Sunday.
Yeah.
And those of us who made tags on, I'm Sally Naramore, Christy Wright, Joe Wildermuth in the back, Mark Lining, and Jim Waterhouse. We are all on the Comprehensive Plan Committee. This committee's been working for over 2 years now. So this is a long, very thoughtful process that I hope you guys understand. We didn't jump to anything.
Out of curiosity, how many folks here today wouldn't have made it if we hadn't held this on Sunday afternoon?
Yeah. Interesting.
Oh,
Okay.
one way to get rid of it.
No, I just,
No.
it's a little unusual, but the committee wanted to hold this on Sunday because we figured we'd get better turnout than
That was my idea, by the way.
I
Right? And the New York Rural Water, that was my idea too. I'm just saying, take credit now, I'll never get another moment. Anybody have any questions for New York, Ellison and New York Rural Water on that report? Because it's online, you can go and view it, and I'm sure you can reach out, there's contact, but I'll let them go, and New York's Department of Health, the State Department of Health. Okay.
I guess I would ask if they would be willing to attest to the critical nature of Kinderhook Lake being prioritized for granting for some septic work to keep the whole watershed clean.
That is, is that directed to us?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that is not something we're gonna include in the plan.
right.
Source water production plan by New York Rural Water Association, as a member association, does write letters of recommendation for funding, and we would be more than happy to do that.
There you go.
Cool. Do you guys do letters of recommendation for funding or no? Because you're a state organization?
Right.
We can't,
They
Right.
can't do that, right? Okay, but we have your data.
Yeah, another resource is the, RCAP,
Interpret the data in the right way to support the
Rural
program.
community-
I'm sorry, excuse me?
the Rural Community Assistance, RCAP.
RCAP?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, that's a good one. I'm sorry, Dan.
David.
David, sorry.
I was just saying they could probably help analyze the data in a certain way to help support the grant piece, because there's a lot of data.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. All right, good. Okay, thank you. Adjourned.
Thank you very, very much.
Have a nice rest of your Sunday. Thank you guys. You were awesome. It was very good. I was in tears in the back. I was in tears. This is so, I mean, this is what I would look